All right, everybody, welcome to our monthly speaker series of our Emerging Technologies and Creativity Research Lab. We have every month where we have a new speaker really talk to us about emerging technologies and creativity to meet the mission of our lab. But today I'm so really excited because we're doing something different for the first time, where we're having um, student voices coming in and share with us about their experiences on the topic of creativity and emerging technologies. Today, we're going to really be focusing on transitioning to online learning as a result of COVID in March. So we have today Allison and Emma who are here to share with us their experiences. As I always do, I will not really say much about who they are because I'm terrible at introducing people. So I'm gonna let you guys say a little bit about who you are and just say hello to everybody. And of course, I just want to not again, but I want to really acknowledge and thank Andrea for organizing this session for us. So I believe Allison and Emma were in her class at some point. So I'm excited about this. So Allison and Emma, welcome. I am going to now be quiet and give it over to you.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm Allison. I am going into my senior year at Oklahoma State, and I am an elementary education major.
And I'm Emma. I'm also a senior, and I'm also an elementary education major.
Yes.
I love it. We definitely had tons of fun in Professor Ramirez's class. We got to explore a lot with technology and kind of get our feet in the pool about what works, what we liked, what we didn't like, and kind of being able to explain and defend the technology in our classroom. So we definitely enjoyed our time in her class.
Most definitely.
So I'm gonna share my screen to our PowerPoint. So we are talking about the transition to online and distance learning. To start, in the beginning, it was very quick, of course, because of COVID. We had an announcement, I think it was a week before spring break, that we were told you're going to take 2 weeks after spring break and don't come back to campus. And then about towards the end of spring break, we got told, hey, you're not coming back at all. So luckily, right before we left, we were told, take home anything you might need for any of your classes or anything like that. So it was a pretty fast transition. Luckily, we did have that spring break week buffer for our teachers to get a few of their thoughts collected, and our teachers were so wonderful about not putting that pressure on us during our spring break. They still let us have that break, that mental break time. They were fantastic about that, but it was a really fast transition. There was a bunch of outside influences on college students that we kind of wanted to talk about. First being school, of course, no longer in in-person sessions, which can be very difficult for somebody with ADHD or just somebody who just struggles with online format. It can be really difficult to sit on a 2-hour-long Zoom call with one person talking the whole time. A difficult transition for some people. And then, of course, there's COVID-19, which has brought us all together today on this Zoom call. Having to deal with, am I safe? What if someone I love gets sick? What if I get sick? Having to deal with our mortality at such a young age was kind of influential on a lot of us and made this a really scary time to be sitting at home doing math homework in our childhood bedrooms. It's a scary thought to sit at home and do that. And then, of course, there is the sudden loss, the huge amount of loss that we all had to deal with, whether it was loss of a family member, loss of stable housing, loss of income. I know plenty of people who lost their jobs, who lost people they were very close with, and having those outside influences and then for example, I lost my grandmother and then 5 minutes later I was in my math class. And there's cases like that it's great to have that distraction because you can't do anything about it. You couldn't go to a hospital or say goodbye or anything. So it was nice to have that chance to sit down and think about something else. So what did our classes do? So as pre-service teachers versus as college students, because these are very different dynamics. First of all, there was very different approaches by all of our teachers based on what class we were in. So for our observation classes, we obviously couldn't go into schools and watch everybody anymore and see what they do on a day-to-day basis. I think that class ended up doing a lot of replacement essays and stuff because we didn't want to put added pressure on our observation, our mentor teachers, to do extra Zoom calls with us or talk about anything with us. It was definitely a hard time for us, let alone for them, trying to deal with 30 middle schoolers on a Zoom call. Don't want to add that pressure. And then there was some classes like with our special education course, which was already kind of a flipped class format, which is where you do kind of your homework set of stuff in class time, and then you would do studying and notes and all of that outside of class. Our main issue there was service hours. We had to get 15 service hours a semester. And so what we ended up doing was going on a website called Iris, and we were able to do different modules and still learn. It wasn't exactly the same service hour experience we might have gotten in person, but it was still a chance for us to get some education on kids with special needs and all of that kind of stuff. And of course, there's different ends of the spectrum of what teachers did here, and every teacher's class was different. What I found was there was very student-focused learning and learning-focused learning. So, for example, in my childhood psychology class, she was very focused on making sure our mental health was okay during this time. Of course, this is a psychology class. It's kind of what you expect. But she gave us resources if we had lost income. She gave us numbers to food banks. She gave us housing suggestions. She would do anything for her students. So that was very student focused to me. And then our observation class, I feel like, was very learning focused because we had a lot of, it's okay that you're at home and I know this is a hard time, but we're still doing school. And there's a healthy balance here for me of what caring about your students and what still having to learn about what we're learning about in school was during this really hard time. And of course, it's hard to find that balance, but a lot of our teachers navigated that really well. So I think that having that balance was good. But I know a lot of people wrote a lot of essays last minute because we had to replace assignments that were unreplaceable. Observations we had to write essays for. And there's really not a better way to do that. It's just what happened. And then as college students, I feel like things tried to remain as normal as possible. We would have Zoom calls during our regular class time or something like that in place of regular class. We would just do class online. So that's kind of what happened there with pre-service teachers versus as college students. Did anybody have any questions in the chat or anything like that?
Did y'all move home?
I moved home. I moved to Fort Worth, Texas.
Okay.
Back home as well.
Allison, where do you live?
I live in Tulsa, so I moved back home as well.
I thought that was as a mom of a kid your age, plus two more daughters who are older, one of mine moved home from Austin. She's 29, and another one's in law school and moved home. Another one's a senior at OSU, and he stayed in his rented house. But that's a stressor on the parents as well as the kids. You don't really expect to go live at home and be a college kid.
Yeah, it's definitely hard. And especially, I know at least two people, my friend Hannah Myers, who lives in New Mexico, and my friend Briley Glass, who went to school in California. That time difference is insane. My friend Briley, she was taking classes at midnight. back in California, it's only like 6 p.m. or whatever that time difference is, but it's definitely hard with living far away from your college and then having to go home and figure out that dynamic with your parents again of living in under their roof.
It's hard for them too. Were you able to financially get out of whatever housing situation you were in?
I lived with my brother up in Perkins, so I didn't have to do that, luckily. Allie, I know you're a president of a sorority, so.
So they did reimburse for part of the time that we weren't living in the facility or eating the food and things of that nature. So, yes.
I'm awfully concerned if this happens again in the fall, if that same practice will happen with refunds on rent.
Yeah, I don't know what people in like off-campus housing, like apartments, did, but I think most people that I spoke to still had to pay their rent through whenever they were done.
My son did, but he stayed living there because his bedroom was taken by others.
Yeah.
So what was the best and the worst of the online class activities that you did? If you pick, this was the best thing, and then I want to hear the worst thing from both of you too.
I think I've said this over and over again. I love Edpuzzle, which it's a video where you can embed quizzes at timestamps. I loved it because you could watch the video over and over again. It would allow you to rewatch it before answering questions, and being able to sit down and watch it as many times as you needed to absorb that information was really helpful to me. And then, as much as I appreciate Zoom, it's really difficult to get all the information I had a 2-hour math class twice a week, and only hear that information once and then never hear it again. So to not have them like recorded to where you can go and watch it back, I think having something that you can watch multiple times was super helpful, and you couldn't always do that with Zoom if you forget to record it or something.
I think the best part of online learning for me was when my professors went in and adjusted the schedule that we had laid out, because then it made me aware of what I still had to do. And then I understand other professors were very busy and maybe didn't have time to do that. But for me personally, it made me less confused about what was going on in the course since it had now moved online. And then my least favorite part was I learned better inside the classroom. So being online was really hard for me. So I would say my least favorite part was the adjustment period of figuring out how I'm going to handle this and how I need to budget my time during the day.
For everybody who's online, please feel free to use the chat window to say hello, introduce yourself, and in the Q&A, feel free to make your comments, ask questions, and let's make this a conversation. So Emma and Allison, please go ahead.
Okay. So next I'm going to talk about a lot of the apps or services used by our professors after we transitioned online. So the first obviously being Zoom, which there are a lot of mixed reviews on this. Sometimes when a Zoom call would go too long, it was almost like you weren't absorbing the information anymore. But if you hit the sweet spot with the amount of time on Zoom, it can be really beneficial. So some things within the Zoom that our professors used that were beneficial were breakout rooms. This was great because it allowed you to get together with a smaller group of students and talk about information in the course. And so that was beneficial because if you do it in the big class setting on Zoom, it can be hard to know when you're supposed to talk, or you don't want to interrupt anyone. So that was super beneficial. Another thing some professors used were polls. So that was a great way to assess where the class was at and assess how we were absorbing the information. Another great thing was the chat. So if I wasn't comfortable asking a question in front of the whole class or didn't want to interrupt something, it was super easy to just type that question, either send it straight to the professor or to the class as a whole. And again, something I already touched on was time length. When the Zoom goes too long, it's almost like not beneficial. Next, another app or service used was Edpuzzle, which Emma touched on. So this is a great resource because there are videos and then the professor can insert questions within the video. So it's kind of like a built-in quiz. And that really helped me understand how I was comprehending information that I was viewing online and making sure that I was taking down notes on the correct things and not missing the main point of the video. A final thing that we used in ed tech was Google Classroom, which is something that, from my understanding, that we'll be using as teachers primarily. So this was a great way to keep track of our assignments and what was going on, as well as using Google Docs and Google PowerPoint. So I personally had used this throughout my whole collegiate career just because it saves your place, and then if you're on the bus or something, you can quickly pull up your paper and work on it while you're on the bus. But it was super beneficial, especially moving into online learning, because it was really easy to collaborate with fellow scholars and figure out maybe some things on topics that we weren't sure about or collaborate on projects. Emma and I even used Google PowerPoint to collaborate on this presentation. So the next app or service used that I actually had not used a lot within my even elementary, middle, high school, and collegiate career was YouTube. And this is, again, another skill I learned in my ed tech class. So how we used that was for a Genius Hour project, which you basically select a question that you kind of wonder about and then become a genius on it. And so one of our things was to use YouTube to create a playlist. So that's just a list of videos with information about your topic. And so I actually kind of used this too in my chemistry course this past summer. If there was something that I didn't understand, how to balance equations, things like that, I would actually look those videos up on YouTube and create a playlist. So that way you can go back and refer to it when you're studying. And then again, YouTube always has great explanation videos when you don't understand something. And then a final service we obviously used was Canvas. And that's just, if you're at Oklahoma State, you know, that's our system of getting our courses and such. So yeah. And then next we kind of wanted to focus on some challenges that we faced with the transition to online learning. And some of this is really applicable to being an elementary education major, but some of it's applicable to every major. In this first instance, tutoring, it's primarily focused on being an elementary education major. So on one of our courses, literature assessment, which is CIED 4233, that's a course where you're obviously learning about literature, and then one day a week you have the opportunity to tutor a young student in reading and kind of help them through that process. So obviously once we moved online, it wasn't possible to meet in person. So there were two options. The first, we had 3 tutoring sessions left. So the first, you could submit 3 videos of you teaching a lesson plan. So it would be just like this set up. I would start off teaching the lesson and then just end it. Or you could talk with the student via phone call or Zoom. So Emma personally submitted the 3 videos of a teaching a lesson plan. And I personally did kind of a mix. So I did 1 phone call with the student and then 2 videos. And from what we found from this, talking with the student via phone was really hard because they didn't have sometimes a copy of the book that we were working with. So it was really hard to help better them in their literature while also they didn't have the book. So it was really hard. So then I transitioned into doing 2 videos. And also part of that tied into that is we didn't want to add stress to the parents. So parents were already really stressed moving their children from school to online and figuring all that out. And we didn't want to be another obstacle or add more to their already full plate. And then another challenge we faced was consistency. So some classes had random meeting times, so it wouldn't be like your time was the same as when you were in school, kind of, or you'd meet randomly throughout different weeks, or only meet Tuesday one week and then meet Thursday the next. So it was really difficult to sometimes make normalcy out of that pandemic where you switched online, and it was hard to plan out your day, which the classes that had very scheduled meeting times were super helpful and allowed us to focus more on our coursework rather than the stress of figuring out, wait, are we meeting this week or next week? Or so consistency and scheduled class times meetings were better. So, and going into that with consistency, adaptations to the courses, as Emma discussed earlier, were helpful and necessary. So, for example, like our service learning credit and educating exceptional learners moved online to the IRS Center, and I actually learned a lot from the modules that I watched for my service hours, and it was not very stressful, which was nice.
Definitely. Hello. Sorry. So there it is. So then we kind of wanted to talk about our in-person versus our online experiences, especially in particular Zoom breakout rooms, because that was big with our teachers this year, because it allows you to put a group of 50 people into 5 groups of 10 people. That way you can talk to each other and start a conversation. These Zoom breakout rooms can tend to be pretty frustrating at times, because I'm sure we've all had instances of talking over one another or something like that, where you don't know who's going to talk next. Professionalism was kind of an issue this semester, because you would be up and ready for class and somebody else would be doing the Zoom laid back in their bed half asleep. So that was definitely something that you had to be like, hi, are you awake? Are we still talking? Again, it's hard to navigate when to talk, so that can be frustrating. And connectivity issues. I know a lot of people that live on farms in the middle of nowhere, so having that internet connection problem can be a really big issue. I know our math teacher had to go up to the school to upload videos for us. That was pretty funny. Versus the in-person conversations can be more productive. You have to be there and awake, more accountable. It's easier to respond, and you have a reliable source of information. So it's just kind of easier to talk in person, but people did the best they could with the situation that they had.
Emma, I wonder if you can quickly just go back to that last slide. I had a, if I can ask a question, both of you and Allison, if we had to go back again to online, how would you address those things, especially 1 through 4? How the frustration, the professionalism, all those issues, any sort of insight on how maybe as a faculty I would be able to address some of those?
Yeah, I would say for the professionalism, even like maybe putting a portion of points dedicated towards being professional online on Zoom, because when there's points associated with it, it kind of gives maybe more of incentive. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'd say, addressing that. And then hard to navigate when to talk. It might have just been because it was a first time instance. Like I had never used Zoom before going into the pandemic and being online. So maybe it's just an adjustment period. I'm not sure. Emma, do you have any commentary on that?
I know all of my on-campus classes are online this semester, so I'm kind of hoping that my teachers will kind of address some of the online etiquette stuff in their syllabi. It's really hard to navigate. I totally understand that, especially as a professor, because it's not like you can go to somebody's house and say, hey, get up, get dressed, we're in class. I think having the chat is a great option. I know people forget to look at it a lot. I think that's kind of easier to ask questions through is the chat instead of having to interrupt a whole class, is what a lot of people said to me, is I don't want to ask questions because I don't want to interrupt everything. But it's kind of how you have to do it when it's online, is you have to stop and let people talk. So there's not many solutions that I can think of personally. I know it's really difficult. The professionalism thing, I just would hope would be addressed at the very beginning and kept thorough through the whole semester. Don't lay down in bed the whole time, the thing.
Christina in the Q&A had a good question. She asked, like, thinking making the groups smaller, less than 5, would make breakout rooms more helpful. Or she actually had a great suggestion, making an assigned group each time for breakout rooms might help mitigate some of these frustrations. And I have to agree with her that having an assigned group, while you're not always getting different perspectives, it would kind of help build that rapport between people. And so you would be able to kind of assess better and be less frustrated in certain instances.
And to kind of go off of that, that's how it is in a classroom, is usually you sit with a group of people at a table and you talk with those people the whole semester. So it completely makes sense to make small groups of a consistent people to talk with. I think that's a really good solution.
Well, and grouping is such a pedagogical strategy that you do purposefully at different times for different content. I had to do a Tutoring. We may want to reprise this. I had to do a presentation for NASA on professional meetings in video conferencing, and I was surprised at how many classroom instruction strategies lend themselves to setting up an effective virtual meeting. And I don't know what we could do with that, but there are a lot of great tips and tricks out there for meetings that could be used for classes as well.
Yeah, and
like giving people roles. You already mentioned that at one point.
Yeah, I think both Emma and Allison, you're absolutely right about those online etiquette. Because we have in the physical classroom, we have rules and guidelines of that are really on page 1 of the syllabus. So maybe putting something similar to that in an online space would make a lot of sense as well.
I have a long list of those strategies if you want me to send it out to y'all. Maybe I could I'll slap it on a website and put a link in the chat.
Great.
I know my professors usually tended to address how we should speak to each other online, but never how we should present ourselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a good point.
One thing I noticed, my kid who's in law school, her professors would have themed days, and this is one of the big tips and tricks for virtual meetings is, like, they might have a wear your favorite hat day, or bring your favorite mug day to class, or something to kind of tie everybody together. But that helped with the getting people dressed and ready to go, because they'd have a specific day, like wear your pajamas day, or, the expectations were very clear for each themed meeting.
That's great. So what now? There's still a lot of unknowns, definitely. I know OSU is technically going back to campus, but a lot of the elementary majors that I know aren't going to be physically on campus this year. So our observations are still in person, but all of our regular courses are online. So it's kind of hoping to put all of these things that we've talked about today together to make things better, not as rushed, kind of have more consistency throughout.
And so we actually sent out kind of like an online learning questionnaire to some of our peers, and we got about 10 responses back. So we wanted to share those results with you. So how do Oklahoma State students feel? So we asked the question, what was their favorite format for online learning? And you can see all the percentages listed on the screen. So 10% liked Edpuzzle, 10% liked whole group Zoom, 10% liked YouTube videos, 10 liked Zoom, 10 also liked Zoom or YouTube videos, both combining together. Actually, so sorry, 20% liked YouTube videos. 3 liked YouTube videos and Edpuzzle, and again, another just 10% liked just regular Zoom. So then we asked their least favorite part about the transition to online learning. So one person said everything being so unplanned was overwhelming. Another person said that they didn't feel as accountable as in-person classes, which I can see that as well. Another person felt like they were just running through the motions of everything and not really absorbing the information. Long Zoom calls was also people's least favorite part. Another person not knowing what the online format was kind of like going into it was their least favorite part. And then another was that physical labs were not possible. And then another person didn't feel like they were absolutely prepared. And then 3 people was Zoom for every class.
Was
sorry.
there anything, what was surprising for you guys about that? Because that for me is it's pretty interesting. I mean, the Zoom for every class, that's not surprising. But I guess my question really is like, what are your thoughts on some of these responses?
I think that people generally feel, from what we polled, that things weren't planned as well as they could have been, and that long Zoom calls are hard, from what I gather. It's definitely interesting to look at. A lot of people felt rushed or didn't feel accountable, not seeing those people every day, kind of a thing.
Yeah, I kind of felt the same way as what Emma said. Looking at these results, I can't say that I was necessarily surprised by them. But then again, this is only 10 responses, so it's not reflective of Oklahoma State students as a whole, or even elementary education students as a whole. So I would be intrigued to see if this study went further, just to see what other people's responses were as well.
That would be, not to get all teach on both of you, Allison and Emma, but that would be a fantastic survey for you guys to actually do with a larger group of people. So
I think it'd be kind of fun to do.
You really would.
Out.
So.
And by major would be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Sure.
So this is just another chart we pulled from our survey, was the level of effort put into the course. And so as you can see, it really just ranged from a moderate amount to some, and then a lot. So what's kind of hard about this is everybody's moderate amount of effort is going to be different, as well as everybody's a lot of effort is going to be different. But it was still interesting to see that.
Especially in comparison to in-person classes.
So then we included a place at the end of the survey, just kind of like, do you have any suggested improvements? So this is some of the suggestions from students. Post everything on Canvas, even if it's discussed in Zoom. Clear expectations and organization. Consistent schedule, which Emma and I also already talked on. Emma also touched on this. Record synchronous classes so students can watch/refer to it later if needed. A lot of students wanted a little bit more structure. And then some said they wanted more interaction and involvement from professors. And then finally, some asked for the same kind of support that you would receive if in person. And so what I think they meant by that was like 24-hour responses on emails and such. So now it's your turn. We did link the survey here if you'd like to take it. You're more than welcome to. I believe Emma sent it in the chat.
I'm going to send it again really quick because I think it's a little lost, but.
Perfect. So Emma just sent it in.
Form will be in the chat now. So we're going to just give y'all a few minutes to fill that out, and then we can kind of go over what those results were.
I think a lot of people are filling out that survey. Christina had a question about whether or not Allison and Emma, if you'd be willing to share your presentation.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. We'll post it on the lab space along with the video, so people can view it there as well.
Y'all, I really appreciate you doing this. This is so helpful to faculty to hear this feedback. I have to jump on another call, so I'm going to let you go. But I'm emailing everybody on the call that the thing I was working on planning engaging meetings, because I think that can help with planning engaging. Even if you're doing tutoring online, you might be able to take one of the strategies out of that and use it. So it's definitely a work in progress, but I'll send it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
I think I just sent a shareable link to the PowerPoint in the chat again.
Okay.
It might have just been to the panelists. It's just to the panelists. I will fix that. That should be the survey.
I promise it's not a long survey, so don't be afraid. We have 12 people on, so we should hopefully get 12 responses. Well, maybe minus the presenters, so.
I think you might have a problem with the favorite format for online learning question because it requires an email.
Oh.
Hmm.
Okay, let's try. Okay, we can try it one more time. We might have had it set to where you had to use your Oklahoma State email, so I turned that feature off, and I sent another link if you want to try it. But if the link doesn't work, we're more than willing to have, like if you guys have any questions or anything, we're happy to answer them.
Yeah, one of the field is set to accepting an email instead of like accepting a text.
Oh.
I think that's what it is. The field, your favorite thing about. So if you type in an answer, it just says that you need to put in an email.
Oh, that's unusual.
So I just put in my OSU email, but that's not really my response.
It's not set to collect email addresses, which is odd.
I'm going to remove David's iPhone because I don't think that's a real person. They're posting some crazy questions. So bye-bye, David.
So does anybody have any questions for us?
Okay. I can actually maybe promote everybody to speaking roles if they want to be able to say things. So I think you are now allowed to talk. Yeah. Well, for me, I'll get started. I just want to say first, thank you so much. You really shared a lot of great ideas, um, in terms of just your experiences and ideas of how to improve the process for many other people who are going to be learning online. We're going to post a video on our website, so hopefully people will also have other comments and questions and so on. I think for me, the part that was sort of obvious but easy to forget is the idea of enforcing online etiquette, right? So for people like us who kind of work in the online space, that's sort of a standard, but that might not be a standard for everybody, especially when you have to do this at an emergency point where you find out, hey, next week you guys are going online, so move all your classes. And oh, by the way, you guys are gonna have to learn everything online now. So that is really, that's great to be able to reinforce. I really liked the challenges that you raised, the solutions that you came up with. I think that's really, a lot of those stuff are really brilliant. So I just want to say thank you all for the presentation. So I would be really interested in the people who are online is if, Emma and Allison's experiences just unique, or do you guys share the same feelings?
I'll go. This is Clement. I think one of the things that I really like about online learning, I guess I became a fan of Zoom. Partly was because I'm able to collaborate with my colleagues and get, tasks done. It can be assignments or just things that need to be done. So that was one of the things that I really like about it. But I think you guys mentioned something about the breakout room. It was a struggle for me at first. I was trying to figure it out. We didn't have it with my colleagues, but I tried it with some of my, the kids that I coach soccer with. And I figured that, like you guys mentioned, where if you start putting them, they're trying to jump in every time when somebody's talking. So what I did, I tried to do was I have one person talk first, and that's their time. And then after they're done, they choose somebody else to talk. So in that way, everybody waits for their turn. So if there's 5 in there, they can go around. And so, yeah.
Yeah, that's really great.
I think Christina has no mic on the computer. But saying, for discussing online etiquette, would you want teachers to provide a video or this, or provide articles? What would be the most effective in sharing this with students? Maybe an ed puzzle?
I think teachers could do a video, definitely. I know a lot of people are visual learners. I don't think it's something that has to go too in depth, but I think it's something that definitely needs to be addressed. Just kind of saying at the beginning of the year, hey, when you come to class, act like you're coming to a real class. Don't come laying down in bed in your pajamas still. It doesn't have to be very, strict or something like that. It's just something that address it at the beginning of the year. If it keeps coming up as a problem, then maybe go more in depth with it of what you expect of your students.
This is Penny Thompson. I'm gonna jump in here with a question that's related, and it's something the discussion here about online etiquette kind of made it salient, something that's been kicking around in my mind. I'm struggling a little bit with the balance between, like, we know that people are having difficulty with things like childcare, but at the same time, 2-year-olds really disrupt classes and meetings on Zoom. I mean, the disruption is real. And I actually was in one meeting where the participant's wife and toddler were in the same room, and like, I kept thinking, why can't his wife just take the kid to another room? So I think we've kind of been trying so hard to be accommodating that everybody's like, oh, look at that kid, isn't he cute? And so I'm thinking out loud here, but there needs to be somehow a balance between being compassionate and understanding the situation that people are in, that they don't have childcare, they don't have large houses, there's people living in multi-generational houses where, people's situation is different from ours, so you don't want to be not compassionate, but at the same time, you want to explain to people how important it is for them to do whatever they are able to do, and not just say, oh, look at my cute kid, listen to my cute barking dog. So I don't know what the balance is, but that's what's been stewing around in my mind since that topic came up a few minutes ago.
Yeah, it's definitely something difficult to address, especially because everybody's housing situation is different. I was actually a nanny this summer for a dad who was working in the home, and I know that not everybody can do that. It's really difficult. It's really hard. I think what I would do probably is just, hey, here's our general etiquette, just another refresher on what's okay in the class, what's not, and beyond that, it's a tough thing to address for sure. Sorry, I don't have a better answer.
No, I didn't expect you guys to have the answers, since I could barely put the question into words, but I just kind of wanted to get it out there. It's just one of those things that we're going to have to grapple with.
For sure.
It is a real challenge. Some people, I had a meeting with a mentoring session that I was doing, and one of the people that was on the session was speaking from a closet. So I was like, that's odd. Why are you in the closet? She said, well, that's the only place in my home where I can actually talk from, because she was an adult student who also had her kids were back home from school, and she's like, all my kids are on their online class right now. They have nowhere else to go. So if I was sitting in the living room, we will be hearing them, or we'll be all in the same exact shot. So it kind of, brings certain issues to life in terms of the different challenges that people are facing in the household. If it's easy, maybe not easy, but when during school session, if you have only one home computer, it's not as a big deal because as a student, you can stay on campus longer and use the lab longer maybe, or go to the library. Now, when you can't go to any of those things, the computer, which is one in the house, has to be now shared by 5, 10 different people. And if you live in a 1 bedroom apartment, it becomes even harder to do a lot of those things. So I don't know, like Dr. Thompson says, I don't know what the answer is, but it's definitely an interesting challenge that we all have, that we're all facing.
I have a last or a question. First, I want to thank you for accepting this invitation. It was very nice to see you making all the differences between you as pre-service teachers and you as college students. And then my question is how your perception change as pre-service teachers with this situation? What challenges you think you're going to face in your careers? What things you think you will need to be prepared to face this situation in the future if this happens again? It's a difficult one, but.
I would say as a pre-service teacher, I know that some schools are returning back to in-person, but also giving that option to some students going virtual. And so I would say a challenge I think I'll face is making sure I'm accommodating my students who are virtual just the same as I'm accommodating the students who are actually physically in my classroom, and balancing that, making sure that I'm dedicating enough time to both aspects and figuring out how that would work logistically in the classroom.
Yeah, definitely. It's a lot of focus on making sure that kids online are still getting the education that they need, as like the same as they would in a in-person classroom.
I'm just curious, Emma and Allison, with everything, with the unknowns, and then of course the online, do you guys think you guys are more prepared now to kind of face that online learning, if it, in fall, if it comes back to that, like for your students, if let's say?
Yeah, I know all of my classes are online, and so I've kind of prepared myself for that. I'm definitely more prepared than I was when I left for spring break in March to do an online class, and I think a lot of younger students are more prepared to take an online class than they were in March as well.
Yeah, I'd agree with Emma. Since we've already experienced it, you grow from every experience you have and you learn a lot. So I've definitely learned a lot from my online learning experience. And just like Emma, I believe all of my classes are now online as well. So I am prepared for that. I've accepted it, and I'm getting ready to come back in the fall and learn online.
Cool, thanks.
I had a conversation with my friends who teach like in K-12, and they said that the challenge for them for teaching online is that students, they don't show up on online classroom. Like for example, this morning the power at my home went out, so went off, so I could not join the Zoom meeting this morning. But there are some students that they have everything. They have computers, they have internet at home, but they still don't show up online. So do you have any ways to motivate students to join the class?
I think what was talked about earlier was really fun, where you like have them bring their favorite cup or wear their favorite hat or create a theme day like that. It's really difficult to get kids engaged online. So just having something that will draw them to class, I think, is kind of helpful there.
Yeah, I agree with them. I think that creates a more engaging and exciting environment, because I know growing up and even to go to my classes, I'm like excited, like to walk to class and to get to be in that environment where I feel like I'm learning and growing. And so, like Emma said, creating those opportunities to bring your favorite hat and talk about it or whatever makes you more excited to like get on and engage with others.
Thank you. Yes, like my friends, she's a parent, and then she has strategy that having like fake monies for kids. For example, if they stay at the table and study for these hours, they can exchange money with something like with snacks or something that they can, or some toys. Yeah, that's another way. Thank you.
Thanks, Alison and Emma. I'm just curious to know your opinion about assessment during this distance learning situation. So what do you think about it? Grading and assessments.
I think my professors handled it really well. So like Emma said, we transitioned into a lot of formal papers and things of that nature. I know in my online course this summer for assessment, we had to use a proctoring website, which for me personally, it was free to use. So that was good. But I know some students who had to use proctoring websites and pay for it themselves, that was a little hard for them. But I personally agreed with every assessment I had and the way that my professors handled it.
I think our professors handled it. I know we did write a lot of formal papers, but a lot of people requested formal papers because it was just easy to have a straightforward assignment at that point instead of, with all those outside influences, having to also come up with something creative at the time or something like that. Having a straightforward assignment was what was easiest.
All right, thank you.
Well, we are coming up at exactly an hour time. And I want to be respectful of our presenters' time and everybody else. So I think I'm going to call us to a close here and again and say, Emma and Allison, thank you so much. Like I said, you are trendsetters. We haven't had really student presenters in this session before, and I'm glad that you were our first because I'm now even more motivated to have more student voices on this. So thank you both very much. And Andrea, thank you for organizing this for us. And for our attendees, thank you all for taking part in this. Join us again next month on the last Wednesday of every month, where we'll have some more speakers. So thank you, everybody, and have yourself a great rest of the day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. It
Bye,
was
everyone.
very nice.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.